What's up, Starshines? I'm Sylvia-Moonbeam. It has been a little over a month since I uploaded the last episode of my D&D character. Between a combination of seasonal depression and a couple little personal factors that I'd rather not get into, the month of November was actually a really bad time for me in order to record videos. But now that things are running a little bit more smoothly, it's time to get into the sixth episode of my D&D character. Today's subject matter is my character Cinnabar Servantis. She's currently the only character I'm playing on a regular basis. So, as you can guess, I'm very excited to talk about her. So let's dive in. Cinnabar Servantis is a Tiefling character that I first played in my friend Morgan's Wildscar campaign for Pathfinder. The theme of our campaign is Weird West. If you've ever seen the movie Wild Wild West featuring Will Smith, it's kinda like that, but with magic. Our campaign takes place in the desert town of Aurora Hills, and my character, Cinnabar, is the adopted daughter of a pact devil named Fistophilus Servantis. Cinnabar serves as his inquisitor, hunting down those who break their deals with the devil. Her older sister, Mercuria, is the favored daughter and next in line after their father's eventual passing someday. The loose inspiration for these characters, but primarily the relationship between Cinnabar and her sister Mercuria, is loosely based off of the Nebula-Gamora relationship in the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies. Cinnabar essentially is the Nebula to Mercuria's Gamora. Cinnabar wishes to gain power and mastery of her abilities, so one day she can kill her abusive older sister, who is basically her father's favored daughter. She hopes to one day be able to fulfill that dream of becoming her father's left-hand woman, and again, when he passes, eventually take on the family business. While not a natural leader herself, Cinnabar falls very much into the role of the Creon, serving as his loyal second-in-command and trustworthy ear to whomever leads the party. At first, this leader was the anti-paladin Jean-Paul and the barbarian orc Badrak, who co-led the party, and she attempted to keep peace between the apathetic Aasimar and the boisterous orc. After they both left the party, however, leadership of said party began to be picked up by a character named Jaxus, a drow rogue with ambitions of taking over Aurora Hills and transforming it from a small desert town to the heart of a new city-state, possibly even a new empire. While difficult, Cinnabar fell in as his lieutenant and currently supports his mission to command the town in attempts to build a new future for it. Similar to my character Elisa, Cinnabar is a Pathfinder Tiefling, though I built her slightly different. She still receives the +2 dexterity and intelligence and a -2 to her charisma, features that I represent with having her be good with her hands and rather well read, but not so great when it comes to actual conversations. Her high intelligence allows her to speak Infernal, her native language, Common and Abyssal, both of which are trade languages for her, and Common Sign Language. I studied American Sign Language in college and grew rather fascinated with both ASL and the culture surrounding it, so I wanted to include something as a nod to that in a character someday. Because one of our players was going to be playing a deaf character, my DM Morgan allowed me to create Common Sign Language as my 4th language. It's even translatable to Drow Sign Language, which the aforementioned Jaxus knows, allowing us to communicate rough ideas non-verbally. While it doesn't have a ton of uses in-game, it's a little flavor thing that I really thought was neat, and it demonstrates how easy it is to work any inclusivity into a game. Like Elisa, Cinnabar exchanges the fiendish sorcery trait for a prehensile tail, allowing her to grab items from her bag as a swift action instead of a move action. Essentially acting like a third arm, Cinnabar's tail is highly tactile and sensitive to allow her to pick up and carry objects without dropping or damaging them. I also wanted Cinnabar to have wings, but not be able to fly. The vestigial wings trait was really appealing to me. Pathfinder assigns racial traits using a point system, and I noticed that each of the skill bonuses from the skill trait was worth 2 points, the same as her spell-like ability to cast darkness once per day. With my DM's permission, I was able to keep the +2 to stealth, sacrificing my +2 to bluff, and the spell-like ability to gain vestigial wings. Even then, my DM and I have altered their use a little bit. Her wings can't fly, but they do provide a +4 to fly skill checks, which my DM has allowed me to use on 3 different occasions now to roll a fly check to kind of act like a personal feather fall. As I mentioned before, Cinnabar is an Inquisitor, which is a wisdom caster class that can be best described as combining some of that righteous fury of a paladin and some of the spells of a cleric and some of the flexibility of a druid or a ranger. Similar to clerics and druids, Inquisitors gain a domain in Pathfinder, but they only gain the domain power, not the associated spells. Fitting for an Inquisitor, Cinnabar is of the Torture domain, gaining the Painful Smite power. This allows her to convert the damage of an attack to non-lethal damage, and not only allows me to make a free Intimidate roll, but adds the damage I deal with that non-lethal to my Intimidation roll. As the Torture domain is a subdomain of the Destruction domain, when Cinnabar reaches level 8, she'll gain the power Destructive Aura, allowing her to unleash an aura that forces anyone within, myself and allies included, to take additional damage from all attacks. Cinnabar's main feature is Judgment, a power that can only be activated in combat. As an Inquisitor levels, they can use Judgment more times per day and use multiple judgments at once. In addition, as they level, each judgment becomes more powerful too. You can even swap judgments each turn, allowing an Inquisitor to adapt to their situation very easily. I've had fights where I've used Judgment Protection to rack up Cinnabar's AC to reduce her chances of getting hit, only to then switch to Judgment Healing to restore what health she has lost. When I'm using my crossbow, I can use Judgment Justice to help me land hits from afar, while if I'm up close with my flail or spike chain, I can use Judgment Destruction to really pile on extra damage. And those are only just 4 of an Inquisitor's possible ability choices. At the time of recording, Cinnabar's main spells are Shield of Faith, Spiritual Weapon, Hold Person, and both the light and moderate forms of Cure Wounds, though she's currently in the process of learning how to cast Disguise Self. If I were to convert Cinnabar over to Dungeons & Dragons 5e, things would be a bit difficult to convert, as Inquisitor isn't a class. Instead, it's actually a background. Specifically, Inquisitor is a background from the Planeshift Innistrad document. While Planeshift documents are not in any printed book, they are official 5e canon, meaning it should be easier to convince a DM to allow it since they are not technically unearthed arcana. This gives a proficiency with investigation and religion, as well as thieves' tools and a set of artisans' tools. I personally suggest calligraphy tools because you can use them to forge letters or signatures, but the choice is up to you. You also receive the feature Legal Authority, allowing you to arrest people on behalf of the church or your devil daddy, because, you're a tiefling. As a 5e tiefling, Cinnabar would gain a +2 to Charisma, Dark Vision, the languages of Common and Infernal, though they also gain additional abilities based on their bloodlines. As Cinnabar was raised in the infernal circle of lust, she is associated with Asmodeus. The actual Asmodeus bloodline is useful, but doesn't really offer any spells that particularly scream Cinnabar to me. Personally, I'm in favor of the winged bloodline, foregoing spells for the ability to fly. While this is a departure from Cinnabar's Pathfinder design, the best parallel we can get for her prehensile tail is the Mage Hand spell. So Personally, I think gaining actual flight with her wings is a worthwhile trade-off for losing her prehensile tail. As you probably guessed from the fact that Inquisitor isn't a D&D 5e class, Cleric and Paladin are likely her best options. Paladin has some awesome options, but none of them really appeal to me aside from Oathbreaker, and even then it doesn't really fit the feeling of Cinnabar. So I guess we're doing Cleric again. Honestly, I feel bad about doing Cleric in so many videos, but that just shows the versatility of the Cleric class, that I can do Cleric for so many different types of characters. Given Cinnabar's personal devotion to upholding justice and her moral code, an Order Domain Cleric makes the most sense to me. Domain spells like Hold Person, Zone of Truth, Mass Healing Word, and Dominate Person are right up her alley. Voice of Authority is a neat ability that allows you to trigger an ally's reaction to attack when you use a spell on them. And Order's Demand allows you to temporarily charm enemies, and Embodiment of Law allows you to turn enchantment spells into bonus actions, allowing you to get additional spells off or even throwing extra attacks in if you desire. But I want to suggest an alternative. As a 5e Tiefling, we get a +2 to Charisma that the Pathfinder's Tiefling didn't have. So what if we try a Warlock? Given that Cinnabar is a bit of a bookworm, Pact of the Tome feels appropriate and would grant us 3 cantrips from any class's spells. Toll of the Dead is a powerful cantrip from the Cleric list, as well as Spare the Dying. Shillelagh and Thornwhip are good options from Druid, and lastly, Mage Hand, Prestidigitation, and Ray of Frost are all good options from Sorcerer, and all of those spells are very thematic for Cinnabar's playstyle. Of course, our patron is not the Fiend like you might expect, but the Raven Queen. Cinnabar is more of a icy devil than a fiery devil, and the icy spells are super cool. Raven Queen also grants us False Life, Sanctuary, Silence, and Spiritual Weapon, 3 of which are spells that the Pathfinder version of Cinnabar had. I've also wanted Cinnabar to gain a bird familiar for a while, and the Raven Queen Pact gives us a cool raven with some special powers. Because Cinnabar is a fairly complex character, it's hard for me to imagine a magic deck for her. As a Tiefling, logic dictates she should have red or black in her color scheme, since devils and demons magic are represented using red and black. But she's also a protector, though, a healer and a shielder kind of playstyle, so I wouldn't be surprised to see her with white mana. And a lot of her spells and abilities fall under the realm of control, which implies blue mana. And she is a wisdom caster, and wisdom kind of lends itself to green, though honestly green mana doesn't really make sense for her. So as you can see, it'd be really hard to create a magic deck for her because her identity is kind of split evenly among the different colors. For Pokemon, however, it's a very different story. If Cinnabar was a Pokemon trainer, she'd actually have almost too many Pokemon to choose from. When Cinnabar activates her Inquisitor's Judgment feature in Pathfinder, she calls out her catchphrase, "Prepare for Justice." This phrase was actually something that Arceus said in Arceus and the Jewel of Life when using the move Judgment. But Arceus wouldn't make sense for her. She doesn't really worship a god. It's more of a justice type of god. Lucario fights for justice, and their Mega Evolution can represent her Judgment ability. There are also 4 Pokemon known as the Swords of Justice, but Cinnabar doesn't really have an element, so it'd be difficult to decide between Terrakion, Cobalion, Virizion, and Keldeo. Again, I could say Virizion because she's the only female member of the Swords of Justice, but that feels like I'm tokenizing Cinnabar's gender. Plus, I already said that I wouldn't use green mana, so grass type kind of feels out of the question. If I wanted A more literal sword, however, Aegis Slash can literally represent her spiritual weapon, and a long sword is the spiritual weapon of lawful-leaning characters, including her goddess, Justitia. Sableye is a little gremlin, which is kind of like an imp, a type of devil or demon. But if I'm going to have a dark-type Pokemon based on something demony with the ability Prankster, I personally would rather have Grimmsnarl. Grimmsnarl's long whip-like hair can also represent Cinnabar's Spike Chain and Spine Flail weapons. For the fourth and final Pokemon of her team, I have to include Zygarde. Zygarde is literally the order Pokemon, so the connection is already there. Zygarde also has wings that can't fly, similar to the Pathfinder variant of Cinnabar. There's even a more powerful form in Zygarde Complete, another reference to Cinnabar's Judgment that restores their HP when switching, similar to how Cinnabar can restore her own health with Judgment Healing. So I'd actually say Zygarde is a better fit than Arceus, despite the catchphrase. So what do you think of Cinnabar? She's honestly one of my favorite characters I've ever made, and I look forward to seeing how she evolves next. If you want to see more content like this, make sure to hit the star shine subscribe button below, as well as the Moonbeam bell. Until next time, I'm Sylvia-Moonbeam, and see you all, Starshines. Till next time.